Hey, everybody. Welcome into the Kilo Show. I'm going to give it a couple minutes or so for folks to join in. But in the meantime, drop in the chat where you're calling in from. If you've been to any of our previous sessions, you'll know I'm Brian. I'm based in New York City, and we've got a few Kilo team members here based, all around the US and the world. So I'm always curious to see, where the community is calling in from. And we'll get started in just a minute. Seeing hi from Poland, India, Idaho, Romania. Great to see a global group here. This is exciting, right? It's the first ever Kilo show live. So let's get some excitement in the chat, right? It's Friday. It's a great day. Hey, there we go, Joseph. Thank you, and Scott. All right. I think it's time we can get started here. I'm just gonna go ahead and share my screen. Also, drop in the chat if this is your first ever Kilo webinar or if you've been to one of these before. I'm also curious about that. But all right, welcome in everybody. So for those who are new here, and this is our first event for the Kilo Show, it's going to be our live variety hour, our office hours, our new weekly session where we talk about what's happening at Kilo, what's new, what's coming, and we'll bring in some guests to talk about their areas of expertise and to shine a little more light onto what's happening all around Kilo. And today we've got a packed show. We've got product updates. We've got some special guests joining us, including our CEO and co-founder, Scott, Brendan from the DevRel team, and we'll make sure to leave some time for Q&A at the end. Sound good? All right, let's get into it. So for the agenda today, this is what we're going to be covering. First, I'm going to walk through the weekly product roundup. We had a really solid week of releases, including support for something called Skills that I'm really excited about, plus some CLI improvements and some autocomplete updates. And then Kilo CEO and co-founder Scott Breitenother will join me for a discussion on the larger agentic engineering landscape and how he sees Kilo's role in it. And then I want to talk about two features that have been getting a lot of attention recently: App Builder and code reviews. So we had two of our engineers, Yevgeny and Suresh, write up these really great retrospectives about why they built these features and what problems they're solving. And I think it'll be really valuable to dive a little deeper into that. After that, we've got the results from our App Builder contest, which I got to say, you all built some really impressive stuff. And I'm excited that we're going to announce the first, second, and third place winners of the $500 of Kilo credits and subsequent prizes. So that's super exciting. And then we're going to bring in Brendan, who's going to talk about something that I think a lot of us have been feeling, which is the shift in how senior engineers are thinking about AI coding. Finally, I'll wrap up with our new open source sponsorship program, which is a pretty big deal for OSS maintainers. And if that sounds good to everybody, we'll go ahead and get started. Okay, so let's start with what shipped this week. And honestly, this was a pretty feature dense week for us, as they usually are. And one headline feature is something called Skills, or maybe better known as skills.md. And this is, I think, a really interesting addition into how you can work with Kilo. So skills are basically a lightweight open format for extending what the AI agents can do. So you can think of it as, packaging up domain expertise or specialized knowledge and repeatable workflows that the agent can tap into without you having to remind it of how you like to work every time. So let's say you have a very specific way that you want your team to handle database migrations, or you have particular conventions for how API endpoints should be structured. You can encode that into a skill, and now the agent has access to that knowledge whenever it's relevant. And I think this ties directly into what makes Kilo different, right? We've got these 5 specialized agent modes: orchestrator, architect, code, ask, and debug. And skills gives you another layer of customization and specialization on top of that. So now you're not just picking a mode, you're also giving the agent specialized knowledge that's relevant to your code base and your team's conventions. So I'm just going to stop sharing and show you what that looks like in Kilo firsthand. Got to share my whole desktop here. Oh, and there's a beautiful little extension notification there, perfectly timed. All right, so skills is just basically a markdown file that follows this open convention that teaches the agent how to follow your conventions or workflows. And how to implement it in Kilo is that you just add to the .kilo code folder a skills folder, and then another folder named after the name of the skill. So this is Kilo Man. It's our favorite Kilo code demo. If you've been to previous webinars, you might have seen it before, but it's basically just a 2D platformer game like Super Mario or something. And I wanted to add more levels to it. So I created this skill that's a level designer that designs 2D platform games with thoughtful pacing, challenge progression, and player centric layouts. And then it teaches the agent using the skills protocol how to design the levels in the way that I like so that I don't have to remind it every time I want to do that. And so once this is in this Kilo Code skills level design folder with the skill MD file here, and one thing to note is that the name of the skill has to be the same as the folder that it's in under skills. We can go to Kilo Code and we can say, build a new level for this game. And when you fire that off, what's going to happen is it's going to search for the skills and implement the correct skills. And that's the first thing it does here, right? It found skills level designer, and now it's going to proceed with the task using that context. So I think that's really useful for, progressing the agentic orchestration workflow. The next thing is one that's really nice for CLI users. And we'll go ahead and switch to the CLI here, and we'll close that out so that it's not too loud. Is you can now paste images directly into the CLI. So on Mac, you can just paste Control V, and the image attaches to your message. And you can also reference images with the @ symbol and path. So just a quick example, if we want to throw the Kilo logo in there, it'll reference where the logo is, and then it will send it off to the LLM as part of the API request there. So we already have image support in the ID, and now it's in the CLI. So it's great for if you want to show an example of what's broken in your app, or you want to show an example of a UI that you want your app to look like, some things like that. And I think if you're a CLI person, you don't want to have to jump over to the IDE just because you need to share a screenshot or you need some visual workflow. And now you don't have to. And the next one is, subtle, but I think it's going to change how a lot of people prompt. Chat autocomplete is now enabled by default. So you're probably already familiar with regular autocomplete when you're coding in manually in files, but now that same autocomplete is also in the prompt box. So for example, we're back in maybe we'll go back to Kilo Man, and if we want to start, like the last example, we said we want to build a new level, we'll start typing build a new level. Oh, live typing, brutal. Build a new level, and it will automatically populate with ghost text suggestions for you to complete the prompt. And honestly, um, I've been using this for a few days now, and it's surprisingly useful. It helps you articulate what you're trying to ask faster, and sometimes it surfaces options you might not even thought of, or uses context to surface options that you should be thinking about. So it's really helpful, especially when you're doing like really specific work where it can reference a file or whatever, and help you prompt better. And then one last thing is that there is now support for minimum balance alerts for teams and organizations. So if you have a Kilo org, you can now set up low balance alerts so that you know when your credits are running low before you hit zero. And this is actually something that when you're on the open pricing model like Kilo, when you're actually paying per token at provider cost, you want to have some visibility into your spending, and you want to make sure that you don't run out when you're doing important jobs. So you can set a threshold, and a designated team member can get an email when you drop below it. Simple, but very important for teams managing budgets. All right. I'm going to switch back to the slides here. And if anyone has questions during this, feel free to throw it in the questions tab in the chat, wherever. By the end, we're going to go through as many as we can. So feel free to start firing them off right now. Go back to the presentation. Oop. And yeah, so now I want to bring on our first guest, very special guest, Kilo CEO and co-founder Scott Breitenother. So, Scott, if you want to jump on the stage real quick.
Hello.
How's it going, Scott?
Great to see Brian. Great show so far. Loving the Kilo show.
Yeah, I know, it's exciting, right? And for, if I haven't already mentioned it, this is something that we're going to do every week from now on Friday. So if you're having a good time, make sure to stay tuned next week as well.
And,
All
and
right,
I'm
so
excited to be the first guest on the first episode of the Kilo show. What an honor.
that is a big deal. Like, the first guest on Jimmy Fallon is probably a notable thing too, and that this is just like that, right?
I mean, hopefully I do well enough that you invite me again. Let's hope.
I'll think about it. All right. So for this segment, I just want to turn off the screen sharing and just have a discussion with you about Kilo, about the overall landscape of agentic engineering, et cetera. And we can just kind of chat about those topics if that's cool with you.
Perfect.
All right. So the first thing is, for people who have been paying attention to what we've been posting and what we've been saying about Kilo, we talk a lot about Kilo speed. And you even wrote the Kilo speed manifesto, Brendan. I don't know if you want to throw that in the chat there. But there was a recent METR study that found that experienced developers using AI tools could actually be up to 19% slower than without them, even though they believe they were 20% faster. With Kilo shipping, 1 to 2 major features, if not more, a week, compared to the industry standard of 2 to 3 weeks or months. What's the disconnect here, and why do you think some teams get massive gains while others are spinning their wheels?
Yeah, that's a great question. I mean, I think that the biggest issue is, and I don't know who said it first, me or Brendan, is that that people are just peanut buttering AI on the existing setup. And I think
Right.
Brendan actually released a really good blog post recently, and he can also put that in the chat. But they're kind of taking AI and they're just spreading it right on top of the existing pre-AI org, and like scratching their head and saying, like, why am I not getting great results?
Right.
I mean, the spoiler alert is like AI is kind of, it's a multiplier of the human. It is, I don't think in any way it's a replacement of human. It's a multiplier of human. But when that human is stuck, in meetings, stuck developing, I guess, PRDs that are stuck for weeks, on a whiteboard or for review, or a
Mhm.
PR that they put out takes a few days to get reviewed, or they're hopping back and forth on tools. Of course, they're going to be slow. And so, we've gotten to a point with AI where writing code is no longer the bottleneck. I mean,
Right.
we really do need to resolve kind of the process issues that we've developed over kind of the past decades of kind of what it means to work. And so, the things that we're really proud of at Kilo is that we're kind of squashing velocity killers left and right. So internally, one engineer owns a product end to end. They get the strategic direction, they go out, they use a team to develop it, but that team is a team of agents. It's not a team
Right.
of people. And of course they can talk to colleagues and bounce ideas, and collaboration is okay when it's value adding. But I think too often, I think people just get into the habit of collaborating and setting up meetings as almost like a comfort blanket. And
Right.
so, we're really good at taking away those comfort blankets, or at least showing that they're not needed, and having engineers like Evgeny and Suresh, and like the work that Suresh has done on code reviews, going from idea, a pain point, to an idea, to a concept, to something working, and we're
Mhm.
dogfooding it internally, and then he's got it out in production, and now he's working with users to make it better every day. And that's all Suresh. I mean, so if you like code reviews, that's Suresh, and so that single threaded ownership has just been such a big unlock. And of course,
Yeah.
I'll be the guy that says it. Having a tool like Kilo that you don't have to swap back and forth between, a million different windows, and you can go from kind of idea to coding to code review to one click, production with deploy. I mean, it helps in kind of squashing those velocity killers.
Totally. And that's what I was going to bring up as well, is that, like, I think one of the things that's so exciting about this time is the innovation in all
Yeah.
directions with AI, not just coding, but all of these other tools that supplement the development life cycle. But I think a lot of people aren't realizing just how damaging and detrimental that context switching is when the tools are fragmented. So like,
Exactly.
yeah, you don't want to have to switch to a different platform or manage a different account or different settings when you want to get
Mhm.
code reviews versus when you want to deploy or when you want to just prototype something in a live preview app builder like Kilo's app builder. And
And
so,
not to mention, it all works better when it shares the same context.
right,
Shares the same kind of semantic indexing. I mean, it just makes it better.
totally. And another thing that's obviously central to Kilo is being open source. So we're built on open source, open pricing, open model selection with over 500 models in a space where other tools are locked into proprietary models or closed ecosystems. Why does open matter so much for developer productivity, especially in this age of
Yeah.
accelerated innovation?
Yeah, I think like open is our superpower. And I mean, I'm not afraid to tell the world open is our superpower.
Right.
And that's everything from, like you said, open source. I mean, we're at a point where you really do need to trust, this kind of your partner, which is the AI agents, that they're going to do what you want them to do. And so
Right.
just kind of by having the ability to look at our code, see that we're not, doing any, messing around with the context. You can see where the requests are going. Um, and also, if you have an idea, you can make a pull request. I mean, we have an open source repository. We've got our kind of users, our community is always making ideas, and we encourage them to actually kind of propose code changes as the kind of means to express their ideas, and it's been great. It's kind of not only helped us with trust, but it's also helped honestly to accelerate our product development because community members can just get in there and code.
Totally.
I mean, it's also when I think about the open models, it's that it has been wild to see the pace of development in AI models, especially coding models, in the last couple of years, but even I'm saying the last 3 months,
Totally.
between Gemini, GPT 5.2, we've got latest Opus, Z.AI, Minimax M 2.1. I mean, it feels like every single week there's a new great model. And we believe you should have access to all those models and use the right model for the job.
Yep.
On our engineers on any given day, they might be using Opus to architect, Minimax M 2.1 to code, and GLM to debug. And I think that's what the world's going to be doing. Like, the world is heading in the direction of a collection of, really great models out there. We're not moving towards a world where there's one or two. You're going to
Right.
have the right model for the job. You're going to have the specialist, the kind of more cost-effective one, the faster one. And I mean, we're a big believer that we shouldn't restrict folks, and also when they choose that model, we shouldn't throttle them in any way.
Yeah, totally. And I don't necessarily come from like a full stack engineering background, but I will say from my perspective, like getting in with Kilo and using it every day, I feel like I've noticed that these models already have different personalities and strengths and have helped
Exactly.
me become like a full stack engineer in practice, even though that's not my background, which has just been a really incredible experience on my end. But I do see a comment in the chat that
Ooh.
someone said trusting too much can be dangerous, and that actually kind of leads into the next thing I wanted to ask you about, which was the vibe coding
Yeah.
discussion. So Andre Carpathian, I hope I'm pronouncing that right, coined vibe coding last year, describing how developers increasingly describe what they want in natural language and letting AI handle the entire implementation. So some critics and people in the chat right now are saying that this could produce fragile, insecure code. So where do you land on this? Is vibe coding different than engineering, and what's its place in the agentic engineering landscape?
Yeah, I think like, when I think about just vibe coding or just agentic coding or agentic engineering, it's, a human augmented by AI. It's a human
Right.
giving requirements and an AI delivering on those requirements. And I think there's no surprise, the better and more precise the requirements, the better you get. And
Right.
and so, that's what I'll say that like I do think there is this kind of place for, vibe coding and just like low, not giving a lot of direction and just kind of getting some ideas and just like an ideation partner. But I really think it's important that to remember that again, AI is a multiplier. The more specificity you give, when you tell AI, design me a house.
Yeah.
Just that it's going to, draw a square and a triangle.
Right.
If you say, I want a 2,500 square foot house, I want, this color, these shingles, these windows, the style, this kind of, that's the difference between, an architect or an electrician, designing a house and, someone coming up with an image of a house. It's the
Right.
same concept. It's just around specificity. But I also think what's important is that, and this is something that we've thought really long and hard with App Builder, which is our kind of visual application development, that doesn't require, it's low code, no code. Is whatever you build, it should be built production grade behind the scenes. Because I think too often, vibe code with kind of giving really kind of low level, not really precise instructions, and you produce something. It might be like, idea's great, let's put that in production, and then you have to rip it down and start over because it's kind of garbage underneath.
Right.
What we do is our app builder is built on the same great coding engine that our VS Code extension, our JetBrains extension, our CLI are built, so that when you're kind of building something, whether it's a visual editor or VS Code extension, it's ready to put in prod.
Totally. And I think a lot of those people, I think one of the things about vibe coding that's exciting though is that it's allowing people who aren't engineers to build real apps and to build even production ready apps through tools like Keela's App Builder. So there's kind of a debate going on with that, right? That some people are saying that it will democratize coding entirely, letting non-developers, be as effective as seasoned developers. Others argue that it only raises the bar, making skilled developers even more valuable. Which camp are you in, and how does this affect what Kilo builds?
Yeah, I think all the camps essentially. I do think that it's amazing what non-developers like you and I can produce.
Totally.
But on the flip side, would I feel comfortable developing, a critical application, putting production? No. Do I feel comfortable, making a change to the Kilo website? Yes. And in fact, we have no front end developers that work on the website. It is all DevRel and marketers and, folks like me. And then on the flip side, though, what I see with our, the developers at Kilo is when you take a extremely experienced developer and you augment them with a team of agents, it's kind of shocking what's possible. Because I look at I mentioned a given day of a developer 5 years ago. There's thinking, there's coding, there's meetings. If you take out the coding and meetings and you expand the thinking space and start to push the coding to the agents, the amount that a top tier developer can produce is spectacular. And so, long story short, I think we are kind of raising kind of what kind of entry level folks are capable of doing, but we need to be thoughtful and acknowledge that those people are not going to be pushing code into production and probably shouldn't. And you are enabling folks that are kind of those really experienced engineers. I guess maybe you can push it to production, but not in critical use cases. But it kind of, and then we're at a point where the kind of experienced engineers are really being multiplied what they can have impact on.
Yeah, totally. And I think we're kind of going through some time here now, so I think we'll jump to the next section. But I really appreciate you joining, Scott. Thanks for all the great insights.
I made the cut. We'll see if I get an invitation back.
We'll be in touch.
Okay, perfect. Well, thank you, Brian. Good luck with the rest of your first Kilo show.
Thank you. Thanks, Scott. All right, so I'm going to shift gears a little bit here and talk a little bit more about App Builder. So we just touched on it during that call, and I'm just going to share my screen quickly here. But Yevgeny, who's one of our engineers, wrote this really great retrospective about why he built App Builder. And I think it captures something that a lot of us have felt using these vibe coding and prototyping tools. And I don't know, Brendan, if you want to throw that in the chat there, the blog post that Yevgeny wrote. But Yevgeny, like many of us, had used tools like Lovable and Bolt. And if you've used those, you know that the initial moment is pretty great, right? You describe an app and it appears. That's powerful. But here's the thing, and Scott just mentioned this, and this is what Evgeny kept running into too. When it comes time to actually ship something, you look at the generated code from vibe coding tools like Lovable and Bolt and realize that you might have to spend a week untangling it into something maintainable or using your company's best practices and constraints, and it just becomes more of a mess than if you had just started without one of these prototyping tools. And I think that's a really common experience. I'm curious if anyone that in the chat has felt that. The prototype eventually becomes a dead end, something you demo, something that might be fun to show off, and it's great and it's really cool and exciting that anyone can build something with these tools. But when it comes time to produce something, for production, that's a lot of wasted work. So App Builder started with this question: what if prototype didn't have to be thrown away, right? And so how it works is App Builder is this web-based conversational interface with a live preview panel. So you describe what you want, the AI generates a Next.js application, and you see it render immediately. Every message updates the code, and the preview reflects those changes in real time. So I'll go ahead and actually just throw up my App Builder instance here. You give me just a second. But yeah, throw in the chat if you've used tools like Lovable, Bolt, if you've used App Builder, and what your thoughts are, because we're always curious. Well, I'm going to go ahead and share my screen. So this is a project that I've already built in App Builder, and the live preview is loading. But you can see there's a conversational interface here where you can request what you want. Oops, and I think I undeployed it. So let's go back to App Builder here. So you can describe what you want in this app here. So if anyone has some suggestions of what we can build with App Builder real quick, throw it in the chat. You can pick your model here and you can start building. And what you'll see is, a live preview on the right here, where you can view the real app in real time and ask for changes. And I think a few things make this different okay, so I see some people in the chat here make a New Year's resolution tracker. That's a great idea because I didn't even make New Year's resolutions this year, and I need to do that. Make a New Year's resolution tracker. We'll go for maybe a different model here. We'll try Sonnet, and we'll start building. So, like as I was saying, a few things make this different from some of the alternatives that you might have used. The first, which we just touched on with Scott as well, is model choice. You're not locked into one model. App Builder runs on the same 500 plus models that are available across all of Kilo. So you can use, Claude Opus 4.5 for really complex logic, or maybe a faster, less expensive model like Minimax M2.1 for quick implementations. You can match the model to the task. And someone actually just said in App Builder, let's try Minimax M2.1, having a very good luck with it. That's awesome. Second is pay per token, right? No subscription with invisible rate limits or usage caps. You pay for what you use at the rate set by providers. That's our open pricing model. And that's important if you don't want to run into, arbitrary rate limits or downgrades when you're working on something important. And third, and this is the biggest one, obviously, it's part of the larger Kilo platform. When you outgrow this conversational interface, you're not exporting into the void. You clone the repo and continue in the same platform via the IDE, the CLI, or cloud agents, same models and context, plus orchestrator mode and manage indexing and autocomplete and everything else, all with only managing, one account, one platform, and one payment system across all these tools. And then, of course, one-click deployment is built in, so they're still working on this app here. But whenever it would be done, we could just click this button on the top right, and it would deploy it to a production URL in one click. And that uses Kilo Deploy under the hood here, which is one-click deployments of any Next.js app. So if you worked on something, locally or wherever else in the IDE in the CLI, you can deploy it with one click in the same way you can do App Builder. So, I think the thoughts that Evgeny had in mind when building App Builder was reducing friction, right? That's what we're all about here. When you want to build a real prototype, you don't want to deal with the friction of exporting it to a different platform, untangling it and rewiring it to what your project needs. So that internal dashboard that your team has been working on, or a landing page that someone maybe non-technical mocked up in App Builder, you can have a working version of that in an afternoon, and a production version of it shortly after that. So App Builder is live at app.kilo.ai/app builder. Maybe Brendan, you want to throw that in the chat. So go try it out and let us know what you think. And the next topic that I want to talk about is code reviews. And we have another developer retrospective from Suresh, who built code reviews for Kilo. And that is also on our blog. So blog.kilo.ai. And Brendan, sorry if I'm overloading you with link requests, but if you also want to drop that in there, we'll go ahead and share my other screen. And I'm seeing some comments in the chat here. I just want to make sure we, let people know that we're reading those. Seeing some love for Minimax M2.1. Cool. All right. So I'm going to switch back to the slides. All right, so code reviews started with the fact that Suresh had been on both sides of the code review bottleneck. And I think a lot of us have, right? As a junior engineer, you push a PR and watch it sit for days. Your reviewer is in meetings or firefighting production, or just buried under their own work. By the time feedback comes back, you've already context switched twice, and then you have to reread your own code and try to remember what you were thinking. And then as a senior engineer, you see the other side. You've got 15 PRs waiting for your attention, and you're skimming the smaller ones just to get through the queue. You're missing things, everybody does, but there's only so many hours in a day. And here's what bothers Suresh even more, and we kind of touched on this with Scott earlier as well, the tooling fragmentation. You're building in your IDE, you push, and then suddenly to get a review, you got to manage a different account, a different platform, maybe even waiting for a human to find time to contribute there, and managing a separate subscription. And that agentic workflow that's supposed to speed us up just stops. And Suresh thought, why does it have to stop at reviews? There's already so much great technology within the agentic engineering flywheel, and it should go. You should be able to go from idea to production app all in the same place with the same speed and frictionless experience. And reviews are part of that flywheel, right? So if you don't already know, Code Reviews is an AI-powered agent that automatically analyzes your pull requests the moment they're updated or opened. It reads your diffs, understands the changes in context, and posts structured feedback directly in GitHub as inline comments and summary findings. No manual triggers, no waiting in a queue. You push your code and the review starts. So I'm going to switch again to show you what it looks like to set it up in the Kilo backend here. And we'll just go code reviews. So it's just at app.kilo.ai/code reviews here. And here we go. All right, so app.kilo.ai/code reviews. And we can see we have this configuration dashboard here where you can toggle to enable AI code reviews. You can select from any of the same models that you use in App Builder, IDE, CLI, or wherever else. You can select the review style, strict, balanced, or lenient. Strict flags everything. Balanced is probably what most teams will go for. And lenient is for maybe less important or secure repositories where you only need, really critical bugs and security issues. So people are worried about nitpicking or something like that. You might use lenient. You can choose which repositories it has access to, and then you can define focus areas between security, performance, bug detection, code style, test coverage, and documentation so that you can tell it what to focus on, and then set a max review time so that it doesn't go on for hours and hours, so that it cuts off after a certain amount of time. And then you can provide custom instructions here. So, maybe how your team prefers to receive reviews, the style, the language that you want it to use, and all of that stuff. So if you're already using Kilo, it's simple. You just have to integrate with GitHub here from the integrations tab. And once that's done, you can just enable code review. And the Suresh's blog on the Kilo blog is a really great insight into why this matters so much and why it's an often overlooked part of the agentic engineering lifecycle. And we're really excited to be able to bring that same speed that you get from the IDE and the CLI to a crucial part of engineering, which is reviews. So have a read at that if you haven't already. And we'll go on to the next segment here, which I'm personally very, very excited about, which is the App Builder Challenge. So if you don't know, last Wednesday, we launched an App Builder Challenge. So getting people to build something unique, interesting, fun, useful, whatever it is, using Kilo's App Builder, and then sharing the project with us. So it could be, whatever people wanted. We wanted to see what you could build with it and also hear your feedback on the tool. So in this webinar, we're going to announce the 3 winners. First place winner will receive $500 in Kilo credits. So drum roll for that. And I'll switch back to my other screen here. Thanks for that drum roll, Brennan. All right. So we're going to start with third place. And honestly, we got a ton of great submissions. Everybody's submission was awesome. I had a great time going through and seeing how creative everybody was. But it's a contest, so there can only be so many winners. So thanks to everyone who participated. We're going to be doing more challenges like this going forward. But without further ado, let me announce the winners. So in third place, we have Triple Townish, submitted by Keith. So this was a really fun game that a couple people at Kilo are already hooked on. And since you can deploy with one click to a shareable URL with App Builder, we'll go ahead and we'll just show the finished app. So it's a deterministic, replayable merge puzzle. So you place tiles to create 3 connected groups and chain merges for points. And the reason why this, we thought this deserved a win is because it was a really innovative new game. And I shared some of these submissions with other people at Kilo, and some of the feedback was like, I've spent like 30 minutes trying to beat Triple Townish. So shout out to Keith for that. You'll get your third place prize later this afternoon. And I'm just going to go ahead and share this game in the chat so everyone can take a look and give it a try. Oh, Brendan already did it. Great. All right. So for second place, drum roll again, we have the Polyrhythm Metronome by Reddit user Jedrook. I hope I'm pronouncing that right. But as someone who grew up playing the drums, this one really caught my eye. And I thought it was a really unique and interesting, simple app to build that anyone can have fun with. Yeah, literally drum roll for this one. And I'll show you how it works. So if you're not a drummer and you don't know what a polyrhythm is, it's basically beats that are divided up differently that all line up at the same point on the first measure. And this is like a simulator of that. And it's an important skill for musicians. And I think something that I don't know if anyone has addressed out there on the internet yet. So, other people at Kilo have had a lot of fun with this already, but basically you add these tracks that have different, beats per measure. You can choose different instruments for all of them. You can change the volume. So maybe we'll do one with 5 beats, and we'll do a hi-hat, cowbell, snare. Here we'll go 6, and then you run it. I don't know if you can hear this, but there goes the polyrhythm. Can you hear this? I'm curious. No, I'll share the app and you can try it yourself. But yeah, this was an awesome submission, super creative, something I don't think I ever would have thought of myself, even though I am a drummer. So shout out to Jed Rook or Jed Rich. For the second place prize, you'll get your prize later today. And I'm seeing a lot of love from the chat on these. That was legit. These apps are very good. I agree. So All right, this is the moment, everyone who participated is waiting for the first place prize. Everyone at Kilo had a lot of fun playing with this one. Super creative and innovative and fun. We have we have the Wamba Tochi, which is a virtual pet that you have to take care of and feed and play with. And if you don't, it'll get hungry. As you can see, mine is starving because I opened it last night. So maybe we should go ahead and feed it. Oh, and there you go. It's happier and more full. There's like a menu with food and a currency. So it's like Tamagotchi, if anyone remembers that from maybe 20 years ago, except built with Kilo App Builder and with a cool new modern spin. And as I shared the submissions with everyone at Kilo, everyone loved this one. It's super visually appealing. It's fun. It's interactive. Um, so shout out to the person that submitted Wamba Tochi. You'll get your $500 of Kilo credits later today. And for everyone submitted, we're going to show some love across socials, the blog. We're going to hype up what you all built because it was truly incredible to see the breadth of projects that people submitted. All right. And if you're a little bummed out that you didn't win, well, it's not over yet. Okay. So we're going to do an honorable mention voting period where we're going to take all the projects that weren't selected to win. We're going to put them up on a site where anyone can view and mess around with them, try them out, experiment. And then we're going to open fan voting to pick who will get the honorable mention prize of $150 of Kilo credits. So if you didn't win, your project's going to be featured on this site. You can get your friends and family to go vote for it. We'll do a live leaderboard, and at this time next week, we'll announce who won the honorable mention prize, and you'll all get to see, who submitted. You'll all get to see all the projects that were submitted, and not just the winners. So I personally had a great time hosting this challenge. I hope you all did. Playing, and we're going to do more challenges like this in the future. So stay tuned for that. All right. And now I want to bring on another very special guest and another webinar veteran, which is Brendan from the Kilo DevRel team. So Brendan, if you want to hop on stage and talk about your segment, I think we're all excited to have you.
Hey, Brian, how's it going?
I'm good. How are you?
Good. Thanks for having me on to play second fiddle to Scott. I appreciate it.
No second fiddles. Only multiple first fiddles.
Great. Well, yeah, thanks for having me on. I just wanted to talk about, I've been thinking a lot about this over the break, and I've written a lot about it. And so when you asked me if I wanted to be on, I said, well, definitely. I definitely want to be on. So maybe I'll just quickly, I put 3 slides here. But yeah, over the holiday break, I feel like there was a lot of noise in the Twitterverse about the hype behind AI and denial. I think probably a lot of the folks watching are at least, understand it's not all hype.
Right.
But we talked a little bit about trust earlier, right? And I think, developers are and engineers are by their very nature like skeptical people, which is good, right? Like that's something that brings us, to say, hey, like, can I trust this thing? We're also can be early adopters. So I think a lot of us were like early adopters like 24 months ago or maybe 18 months ago when models were not what they were today, or not what they are today, right?
Right.
But that broke a lot of trust. But I do think if we look at data, and so if you go to the next slide, this is some data mostly from our friends over at Greptile that shows us that like output is up 76% year over year. And they did a lot of like analysis on pull requests and super interesting data to dive into. Again, it's from Greptile's blog, and you can find it linked from our blog. If you can share, Brian, I've shared lots of links. Maybe you can share the link to my blog,
I got
The Space Between AI, Hype and Denial, which then links out to all this data that I've been reading.
There we go.
And it's also something that I think we've seen talked about, but it's like, really, really stark is like how Stack Overflow has just completely collapsed as far as questions asked. And I think that's just showing us that developers really are, moving to try AI
Yep.
But I think, again, there's still a lot of noise about like, oh, AI is going to replace developers in 6 months. And like, I think we're like, again, 2 years into that 6 months prediction. And I don't need to call out who made that prediction because I am a fan of theirs, but like their careers website still has lots of jobs for, you guessed it, software engineers, right?
Right.
Um, and so, yeah, like I think that we're not going to see engineers go anywhere, but we also can't just deny AI. And so if you go to the next one, this is kind of like um, my like call to action for my fellow engineers, which
Yeah.
is like stay curious, right? Like you've got to be curious about AI, you've got to experiment. We of course really think that's important. That's why, we heard Scott talk about how open we are.
Right.
I think that is something that is near and dear to my heart. I spent 5 years at an open source company called GitLab. I'm now, joined Kilo for kind of the same open vibes, but it doesn't have to be with Kilo. But you just got to be curious and try all the tools, right?
Totally.
Hopefully, you try other people's tools, other people's app builder, other people's review agent, and then tell us how we can make ours better, or help us by contributing to the open source.
Yeah.
And then I think just lastly, there's another key point that I think we remember, but then quickly lose as we start using AI, because we use it like a tool. It is a tool,
Right.
but it's so different. It's than every other tool we use. Like it's different than linters. It's different than Git. It's different than containers because it's
Mhm.
not deterministic, right? And we
Right.
expect, again, why did we get into engineering? Because we like deterministic things, right? We like solving hard problems deterministically.
Right.
And AI is just not that. And so that's okay. That just means it's a new skill. It's a skill about, how to deal with something non-deterministic, which again, what's the other non-deterministic thing engineers deal with all the time? Like other engineers and other people. Um, so again, I think that doesn't mean that, there isn't value in having more than one team member. Obviously, if you want to go far, you've got to go together. And so I think now, like Scott said, that's just you plus your team plus agents that can work for you and do some stuff for you. Like
Yeah.
right now, we've got a problem with our events page not working. It's a long story, but like this event isn't listed on it. And I just literally told Kilo, "Hey, go to this site, which like has like all of our live streams listed, and like add them to my event page, please." And like in the background right now, it's just like opening a browser and doing those things.
Mhm.
Again, something I could have easily gotten like an intern to do,
Right.
and I could do it myself, of course. But like it's faster to just let it go churn, right?
Totally.
And it's not going to be deterministic. I'm going to have to read the code. It doesn't have dates. I'm going to have to put the dates in myself. But
Right.
like it's still saving me a lot of time to kind of you know farm some of that out. So anyway, stay curious and don't believe in the hype and don't believe in the denial and find your space between the two.
Yeah, and I think I'm curious what you think of this, but my experience in the space between hype and denial was that I think a lot of people experience this as well. They tried to implement AI into their development workflow 9 months ago or a year ago, and they're still a little soured on that experience because it maybe didn't live up to what they were hoping to get from AI. But then from my perspective now, I've learned so much just from using AI about engineering and watching it implement these best practices that it knows how to do now, that I'm drifting more and more towards that hype side. So I'm curious if people have had that same experience and if maybe that's contributing to this dichotomy.
Yeah, it'd be interesting to know. I mean,
Yeah.
I worked for a company with Git in the name, so did you. But there was a time in my life, and this is dating me maybe even more than the lack of hair on my head. It's like there's a time in my life when I was like, SVN is all I ever need, and I don't know what this new Git thing is. I don't need it. And now I can't imagine going back to SVN, right?
Right.
And so yeah, I think it's a real thing.
All right. Well, thanks so much for joining us, Brendan. I'm sure you'll be another recurring feature of the Kilo Show next week and going forward. So thanks for joining us, and I really appreciate the insights.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Yeah, of course. All right. So there's one more thing I want to talk about before we wrap up, and I know we're over time, so I appreciate everyone sticking around. I hope you're having a good time. I want to talk about something that is really important to us for all the reasons we talked about with Scott and Brendan about what it means to be open source, and that is our open source sponsorship program. So if you maintain an open source project, Kilo wants to support it. The program gives selected open source projects with access to Kilo tools and services, including code reviews, Kilo Enterprise, and for certain qualifying projects, Kilo credits. So it's tier based on the size and activity of your project. And just to give a little more detail, there are 3 tiers. There's the seed, growth, and premier. Seed is for smaller projects or maybe solo maintainers, where you'll get code reviews, AI powered code reviews with Kilo Enterprise in 5 seats, which is a $9,000 annual recurring value. Then there's growth, for larger mid tier projects, where you'll get 10 enterprise seats valued at $27,000 annually, and you'll qualify for credits between $20 and $100 per month that resets every month. And then for Premier, for some of the bigger projects in the world, you'll get 25 enterprise seats valued at almost $50,000 a year and $200 of Kilo credits recurring monthly. And the tier you get placed on, again, depends on things like repository activity, community size, contributor count, and project visibility. But we want to encourage everyone to apply, even if it's just you regularly contributing to your own open source projects. We understand the value of open source. We understand how it's helped us get to the point that we're at right now, and how crucial it has been to Kilo's growth. And we want to contribute all of the other people building in the open, or we want to contribute to all the other projects that are building in the open alongside us. So to be eligible, you just need to be open source with a publicly accessible repository licensed under a valid OSI approved license like MIT, Apache, or GPL. And you need to have an active maintainer who can agree to these terms. And the main obligation is that you enable Kilo code reviews on public pull requests in your sponsored repository. So Kilo will appear in your PR review flow, and you need to maintain some regular active usage. So projects that don't use code reviews for maybe 30 consecutive days may be removed. But this matters because open source is the foundation of so much of what we build. Kilo's open source. Supporting open source projects doesn't just feel right to us, but it also strengthens and bolsters that same community within which we operate and build. So if you're an open source maintainer, I'd encourage you to check out the program and apply. I'll be in touch for those who apply, and you can find the details at kilo.ai/OSS. So I'll send that in the chat. And if you have any questions, you can reach out to oss@kilo.ai via email. And then all that's left now is Q&A. So I'm super appreciative of everyone for sticking around for the whole show. I hope you learned something. I hope you had a good time. And I want to take the opportunity to answer any questions that y'all have about Kilo, agentic engineering, or whatever else. And while we do that, make sure to tune into the Reddit or Discord, where our engineers monitor. Brendan and I are pretty active in making sure that we engage with the community, and we love to hear your thoughts on all of our new features or anything else you're thinking about when it comes to agentic development. So Brendan, I don't know if you want to hop back on stage and help me answer some questions from the chat, but we'll do that for a few more minutes, and then we'll end the show.
Yeah, sure thing. Happy to do it.
Cool. I'm going to peruse through the chat here, see some people typing. Let's see. A question: how do I enable a public PR on code reviews? Well, that's a great question. So all you have to do, as I mentioned earlier, is go to your Kilo dashboard once you're signed up for the sponsorship program. You'll go to integrations. You'll connect GitHub here. It's a 2-click integration. Just go to GitHub and install the Kilo app. You go back to code reviews and you just enable them. And if you have an open source public repository, it'll automatically generate reviews and suggestions and feedback on any PR that you open or update. So that's how you do that. That was a good question. Let's see. Someone said, let's see, what models are people finding the best? So, I mean, I think that's a dynamic question. As Scott sort of mentioned, we're encouraging people to use the best model for the job, right? And the jobs are different, so maybe the model choice is different. For example, Minimax's models M2 and M2.1 are really effective for quick implementations and bug fixes because they're fast, cost efficient, and aren't too much of a resource burden. And then maybe larger, longer term reasoning models like Claude Opus 4.5, you might want to use that for deeper architecture or these long horizon tasks where you're trying to build out a larger project. And then, Brendan, I see that you already answered this in the chat, but I want to maybe talk about it here so everyone else can hear. Someone asked, can spec-driven coding be a reliable replacement for vibe coding, even in the vibe coding platforms like Kilo App Builder?
Yeah. And I think it can. There's a lot of like spec-driven coding is one of, I don't know, 6 or 7, as the kids would say. Ways of thinking about how to prompt agents. I think in the end it all comes down to context engineering. And how do we make sure we get the right context to the agent? And it's hard to say this without sounding like super fluffy, but like it's really true. It's like the more guidance you give the agent, the better off it's gonna be. And spec-driven development is just like a great way of like expressing that, I think.
Totally.
I mean, we would say I just feel like spec-driven development, I don't want to pick one of these as a winner because it's like, it's all just saying like, hey, the better you design something, the more accurate a non-deterministic thing is going to be when it goes to do it. I mean, that's true of humans too, right? Like the example I always give here is I gave a balsamic mock-up to an intern. And if anybody doesn't know balsamic, it's like very like fluffy and it uses Comic Sans fonts to like try and look like it's handwritten kind of. And like I got back a working app with Comic Sans as the main font. Like, and like whose fault is that? It's like it's my fault, right? So yes, I think the more specific you are with the agent, the better off you're going to be, and the more like what you're expecting you're going to get. Now, of course, that means you've got to weigh, like, is it faster for me to write this or is it faster for the agent to write this? But I think you'll find that, as you do it, like Brian said, my way of interacting with agents is so much different now than it was 6 months ago, because I've learned like, hey, if I say these 3 keywords and tell it to go build it, it's going to spend a lot of time, think about it, go through its cycle and do a better job than I would at a first go. And so I think it's really key.
Yeah, totally. And I think maybe the last one, because we're really pushing it on time here. Zane said, who I know Zane's been attending our past few webinars, so shout out to him. But what replaced PR reviews day to day, not just philosophically? And then he suggested that PR reviews moved from human gatekeeping to automated pre-review plus single owner accountability. And I would say that's exactly spot on. Like that's what I think a lot of engineers are doing at Kilo. And another kind of facet of that is something my colleague Ramon said, is that since PRs, from a human takes so long, engineers are starting to load more changes into one PR, which actually only slows down the whole process, right? So instead of, waiting for someone to review 10 different PRs, you just do a huge one that's a lot harder to handle by a human. And that's another place where code reviews can kind of lessen that friction, is that it can do a first pass. If it's really sensitive work and you want a human to review it, it can do that first pass and, highlight any critical things or catch things that, a human would eventually catch, but can now do it a lot faster with those, reviews preloaded. I think that's another really interesting workflow.
Yeah, 100%. I just added a little bit to that before you wrap us up, but like, yeah, I think now I'm more confident when I pass a PR to a human to review because I've got Kilo reviewing it first, finding the easy stuff, and making me look better when I end up handing it to like Ramon would be one, right? He's one of our senior engineers. Like I want to hand him a PR that is like not sloppy, doesn't have obvious issues. It's like great to do that with the AI and then hand a more polished, better, ready to go PR to the human. And
yeah, exactly. And I think that's a good place to call it. Again, I really appreciate everyone joining. I hope you had a good time and learned something. Stay tuned for next week's. And as promised, we're going to give away $50 a kilo credits to 5 random people that attended. And if you're here and you're one of the app builder winners, you'll get your credits by the end of today. And stay tuned for the honorable mention voting, which will start shortly as well. So thanks, everybody. Have a great weekend, and looking forward to seeing you all next week. Bye.